Have you ever personally drawn a line between having ideas about God and actually relying on God Himself when the weight of suffering is on your chest, when the weight of the world is heavy on your shoulders? This is a topic we're going to discuss today on the Kingdom Citizen Podcast. Welcome back, Kingdom Citizens. I know I've been on a hiatus here as of lately. I was supposed to be starting this series, and God had other plans. You know, the proverb is true. Man makes plans of the heart, but God directs his path. And, over the past 2 months, it's been, I would say, an eye-opening challenge. The trial still remains. My wife is still plagued with cancer and much more right now. So this question that I posed at the beginning is have you ever drawn a line between having ideas about God and actually relying on God? And this responded because of my belief, right? Initially, I was baptized at an early age. Both grandparents were pastors, so I grew up in the church. I grew up in my grandfather's church, and that church is still standing today in Alton, Oklahoma. Union Baptist, right? So I'm not a stranger to hearing different ways of teaching, preaching, and those things, right? But as I got older in the faith, doing like most people do in my 20s, was out defying God, and started restructuring my life towards God in my 30s, probably mid 30s more, after I had a bunch of things happen, which drove me back to God. And I started building these beliefs, found a good church that helped build faith, talk about faith in ways I had never heard or experienced before. And, I gravitated towards that. I began serving God and doing those things and serving in a way that I was doing it to please God and hoping man saw, I guess, just looking hindsight. And people saw, but not the people that I wanted to see saw, that would allow me to do more in the kingdom. And I never really understood that, but I never questioned it because I was still serving God, right? But I was learning faith, being able to visualize something that I wanted and being able to obtain that through my faith and through giving and, through being obedient. And when I look back, I was obedient, but I was really more obedient to the church than I was to God. So I went down this path of believing, faith. How are they tied together? Are they synonymous with each other? And what I found out is they have a lot of overlap, but they're totally different, right? And I'll tie this in to why I went on this journey of this question, which, my personal life dealing with the caregiving situation and cancer has taken a different turn than what was expected, than what was prayed for. So let's just start by this: believing. Most of us, we believe in beliefs, which means our faith kind of stays the same at the same level of concepts and doctrines and inspirational statements, right? That we agree with in our head. So we kind of have these concepts, these doctrinal truths that we hear from the Bible, right? And inspirational quotes, right? Because most people are visual people. They're people of, hey, give me an example of this so I can relate to it, right? We go downtown and you give 3 people a map, and the outcome is to make it downtown, right? But everyone has a different direction, is given a different path to make it downtown, but the outcome is you make it downtown to get, at the same time or different times, but you're all there is the outcome. And faith is sort of being taught that way, being looked at that way, and it makes it palatable for your average Christian to relate to. And it becomes inspirational, it becomes foundational. And when you start seeing things, I would say occur in your life that go down that road, then you typically say, this is good doctrine here. This is the right way to do it. Right? But the thing about these is that these beliefs can be orthodox truths, but they still, out there are ideas rather than something that you can lean on and put your full weight on until something hurts. When something hurts and something encounters, and you're trying to apply those same concepts to a more difficult task. So let's look at what that looks like in a different manner, right? So let's take trust. So believing, again, means your faith stays at a level of concepts, doctrines, and inspirational statements in which you agree with in your head. Trust in God Himself. This means you have a personal reliance in trusting yourself to a living person whose character you know to be good, to be wise, to be sovereign, even when His ways feel devastating. Right? And this biblically looks like, the best examples I've found and that I've read many times before doing when I lost someone was Job. And one of the things he said was, though he has slayed me, I will hope in him. And Paul does the same thing. He says here in I will lean not on my own understanding, but I will rely on but not to rely on ourselves, but on God who raises the dead. So I'm looking at that and I start to think, okay, my faith has always been, hey, my faith is, I hope, like I'm just taking this journey. My prayer is, I want healing for my wife. And there's a couple of episodes back where I learned that healing in the Bible never speaks about the physical healing here on earth, but it always in reference to the healing that we receive after resurrection, right? God took those stripes. Jesus took those stripes so that we may be healed. And we all are healed. Those who know Christ will be healed at resurrection. That promise is true. The promise that is not true is, I will heal you from cancer. That you will not experience anxiety when going through this. That you will regain your love back for your loved one in a way that it was when you first met. All of those promises, that's not in the Bible. And you have to think about how that looks for you. But what I look at as a Berean and going through the Word for these past 9 years and researching, reading with a different lens on, which is only one lens, and that's God's biblical lens. And when I want to hear from God, I would say that he used to be silent, but he's only silent when I don't read the Bible. That's when he speaks. That's when he gives wisdom. That's when he gives direction. Not through any other means, right? He doesn't have to, Jesus used a lot of parables in his days, right? And we think analogies are parables for us today. Well, I don't believe that that's necessarily true. That's just my belief right now. For a reason, which they were, right? From the surface, if you're not a believer, it wasn't meant for you to understand, and there was layers to that. So those parables made you dig deeper. If you're a believer, you go deeper, one step deeper and another step deeper to get the full context and concept of what the parable is about. If you stay at the surface of the parable and you start making analogies about the parable, there's a possibility that you get that truth wrong, but you operate certain laws and principles that may keep you in that area until something devastating happens. Right? So to put in other words, are you affirming Christian truths? Or are you actually entrusting yourself? So I ask myself this question. Am I affirming these Christian truths for my wife, for my child, for my future, for my work? And am I using this as a way of, God, where I'm leaning on God through these truths in a way that I can survive the pain that I'm feeling right now, that my wife is feeling and my daughter is feeling right now. I carry their pain with me, so it's like I'm not just carrying my own pain, I'm carrying their pain as well. And it's very challenging right now. And it's just it's very difficult for me to do this. So after just kind of reframing everything that we just kind of discussed, what I'm trying to do and what I've been directed to do biblically is to reframe my faith away from an outcome-based thinking, meaning I need to shift it to, I trust God to heal my wife. Or this is how I got to shift it to, I trust God to heal my wife, and shift that to, I trust God, whatever happens, to my wife. There's a difference. It's not denying my desires of healing for my wife or provisions that grant us the healing, whatever is medicine. We're not denying medicine. We're not doing any of those things. But I have to move the center of gravity from results as the outcome results to God's character and his presence. Because those are one thing that his presence and his character are the one constant thing that never leaves, no matter what we're going through. Right? And I know that this may be tough for some people who are listening to hear that. I'm not trying to say the way that, the name, I'm going to claim it, that it's wrong. But as a Berean, I haven't seen that in biblical terms. I haven't seen that in a biblical concept, in a biblical reference. I haven't seen that being used by Paul. I haven't seen it used by Peter, Timothy, any of the epistles. I've never seen it. But yet, my foundation is based on that. And as I'm going through this trial right now, I've hit a point where I'm already on medication for anxiety and depression. I've upped the medication because it keeps getting deeper. And I went back to the doctor this week because my wife had found out, it was roughly 6 weeks ago, that there's a mass behind her left eye, which has probably been there since the surgery she had in January 13th of this year. And that's the reason why her eye has been protruding outward and she has no control over it, is because that tumor's been sitting back there and been undetected by doctors. We were told to, kind of think of it as a way to, that it was brain swelling, right? And it wasn't brain swelling. So how we found it was, she was having issues with the eye, and she was like, well, we better go in to get this looked at. This doesn't feel normal. So we went in, and then they found out that, hey, your eye is not closing all the way because it's so far protruded. So what we're going to do is sew the eye closed. They sewed it closed, and we did drops 6 times a day for 8 weeks. So that means every other hour we were doing drops for 8 weeks straight, the whole time she was up. And even if she wasn't up, I was waking her up to do these drops. So I had to stay at home and do a lot of work from home during that time. Well, after those 8 weeks, we took her back in. They unsewed half the eye, and the eye healed because she has no nerves on that side, no pain receptors on that side. So she wasn't in any pain, but the nerves wasn't there to heal the eye. So those drops created nerves so that the eye would heal, and it worked. Right? But the doctor was still like, hey, have you talked to your oncologist? I'm just kind of curious what else is the issue here, because, your eye couldn't have done this from the last surgery because they're located in 2 separate cavities of the brain. So we were like, So he was like, you know what? I'm just going to do my own research. I'm going to do my own MRI, and we'll see what's going on. So he did. A week later, come back. There's a mass in the back of her eye. And he's asking us, hey, how come your oncologist, have you had MRIs done this year? He was like, yeah, we've had 4. I'm trying to figure out what is he looking at, why this wasn't seen. So, my spirit is down. I'm I'm at a loss for words right now, And he's like, "Hey, I still see the tumor in the back of your cerebellum as well." I'm just I'm just like, okay. And he was like, "In the Avastin that you're doing every 3 weeks doesn't appear to be working for this situation because the tumor is very large. So I need to get information from him." Long story short, it's been 6 weeks. The oncologist is not giving out information fast enough to the other doctor. So we went in this week and I politely asked, "Hey, I know no one else is concerned about what's going on here, but, is this ulcer on her eye right now, is this a symptom or is this a separate function from the cancer that she has?" And they're all floored like, "Well, we don't know. And she has cancer." Yes, she has medulloblastoma. She has cancer. She also had the North Star test done, and there's 2 types of cancer in her system right now. So I don't know if it's benign or if it's cancerous, but if leaving it there doesn't help the situation for her. And having to be an advocate for her is tough because she's at a spot where she's just tired. She mentioned to me that she feels like she's just waiting time and not living life. And that's how it's been for the past 3 years. Right? So, yeah, now I'm questioning beliefs versus faith. Right? And this pattern, and what I'm finding out here is I need to reframe it away from an outcome-based thinking, which means I got to shift it to what I just explained earlier. I trust God to do this for me, whether it's healing, whether it's open a new door, whether it's give me a new job, give me a promotion at my job. I need more money. When I give more, I can expect more. All these things I've done for years. And the only time I've seen real tangible type things occur is when I started leaning on God. But here's the problem. Subconsciously, I was still focused on out-based outcomes. And this is why I ended up back at the doctor this week asking for help because the pressure has become too big for me again. And the doctor was like, "I don't want to keep putting you on meds." I was like, "I don't want them, but how am I got to stay functional to take care of the family." And right now he was just like, "You need to take off work." So I took 5 weeks off of work and I'm, put on this new medication to help calm my mind and help me to, I'm not denying desires for healing or provision, but I'm just going to move my center of gravity from results to God's character. So you're wondering how I'm going to do this. Well, the first thing I have to do is I have to leverage, my outcome-based faith that houses in my subconscious. I got to retrain it to say, if I believe right and do the right things, God would give me the outcome I want. And that's where I've been. I've been obedient. I've been loyal to my wife. I haven't cheated on my wife. I haven't asked for any intimacy from my wife because she's sick, right? So I've had to learn to forego all these things, right? And over time, it's created discouragement because it's like, man, I've been praying. I've been, you know, we attend church every Sunday. We do all these things, right? And because the outcome hasn't came, I've concluded that my faith is failing, or God is failing, or instead of seeing that the faith was not seeing that the faith was placed on the results and not on God himself. So one of the things I have to do was I had to learn how to change my rhetoric when I'm approaching God in prayer and talking to God. And one of the ways that I've changed it is by saying this: Lord, I have been taught and I have been practicing outcome faith. Teach me now to trust you more than what I'm asking you to do. Because there's times where I say, not my will, but thy will. And then when I'm asking for thy will, I'm asking for God to do it his way. But my heart is still focused on outcome-based results, meaning I wanted to see healing. I didn't want to see another tumor. I didn't want to see ulcer on her eye this past visit that we're treating for right now. I didn't want to see my daughter develop anxiety in front of me and she's struggling with how to process things because she's starting to ask questions. Mommy, when are you going to get better? When are you going to be able to drive? When are you going to be able to pick me up from school? Can you pick me up for school? Are you going to lose your eye? You know, these are all physical things that my daughter can see and I can see and mom can see. But what about leaning on the one we can't see but is always present? So I'm having to re-anchor my faith in a person and then not a script, not fancy words. Because I can look at it and say, I've done these things, just like the rich young ruler. I've done all these things. But one thing Jesus told him to do was, well, give it all away. And he was sad because he's like, man, I did all these things right, but yet I'm still not in the full presence of the good teacher. And he walks away. He walks away sad because he was focused on outcome, but he never leaned on the one who can give him life and give him life for eternity. And this is where God wants us as a family to place our hearts. Because if his will is not to heal mom, to heal Crystal, he doesn't want to lose me. He doesn't want to lose my daughter. We are a part of the kingdom. Now, does this happen to everybody? No, it doesn't. But it's happening to me because God has given me the courage to come out and say, stop being outcome based. Be based on God's will. Is his will for us to prosper and be in good health? It is. And he's already promised that. And he's already given that to us for our resurrection body. Our body is still sin. Cancer attacks, sin is theirs because of sin. Not because the sin we do each and every day. We all sin. This has nothing to do with the amount of sin. This just has the thing to do that The wages of sin is death. And we're all going to meet our death at one point. And one of the things I believe at the great white throne is when Jesus is there and he's asking, hey, did you believe in me? Oh, yes, I did many things in your name. That was all outcome based. Did you believe in me? Did you lean on me? Did you allow me to do the will? Did you allow our Father to do the will in your life? Instead of taking control and saying, well, if you said, no, you're not the right person, I need to go over here. No, this person said, no, that's not the right person, I need to go over here. Or did you lean on me to direct the paths of your heart direction? I'm going to end it right there, and hopefully I'll come back and finish this conversation. But right now it's I've gone way over time, but I have so much to talk about with you, family, and I just pray that this message sparks something in your heart that allows you to take inventory of yourself, your life, and ask, are you an outcome-based believer who uses God, who, and you may even love God, because I thinking that I just want to be obedient to God, do what he asked me to do, and his will is good enough for me. But my anxiety and my anxiety now I'm dealing with is because of my disappointment in the outcome. Self-inflicted right here. And now I have to go through the steps of healing this self-inflicted wound. And I just want to stop others from having to have that same self-infliction. I just want you to know, family, God loves you, and so do I. And please become a Berean of the word. Paul was an extremely bright individual. He knew everything about the word. But the Bereans still went behind him to verify if what he was saying lined up with the biblical truth that God has given us. Until next time, family, love you.